Hi, this week I've added policies to the game, which give the player a lot more control over how employees behave, and began work on another major feature among many other changes. The first step in implementing policies was to design the layout for the policies interface. I thought it would be best to add it as a tab to the game's main interface. Policies are arranged into groups by the area of the business they affect. They are written as sentences, which the player completes with a series of drop-downs that control either the type of comparison used or the value the policy is comparing against. For example, employees must sleep when their tiredness is less than 20. With the layout complete, I got it populating some basic policies. At this stage, they have no real effect on the gameplay, they only appear in the interface. With a bit of coding, I got them to update the actual policies in Unity, which you can see here. As I change the value of a dropdown, it changes the corresponding value in Unity. Here you can see those changes reflected in the employee behaviour. As I change the employee's bedtime, they all go to rest as expected. That's all good, but in the game, things such as tiredness aren't actually represented as numbers to the player. They're converted to things such as very tired, energised, etc. To do the same thing with the dropdowns, I had to add two arrays to the policies. One containing the text that's displayed to the player, and one containing the value corresponding to it. There are more elegant ways of doing this, but this was the simplest to get the basic system working. I then had to come up with text versions of the different age brackets which trees fall into. In the game, these are just numbers from 0 to 4, but to the player, after a bit of thinking, I settled on a range from sapling to ancient. After adding that to the game, the final result of the first set of policies looked like this. I'll be adding more policies over time, but the system now works well and it's pretty easy to add new policies if I need to. With the policies done, I moved on to finally adding a fire button to the employee interface. This has been missing since I redesigned the game's interfaces a month or so ago, and it's been pretty frustrating not having that feature. In order to fit all the different things the player can do into the space I have, I decided to add a sort of command bar that appears at the bottom of the interface whenever an employee is selected. At the moment, the only options will be fire and look, but there will be more actions available to the player in the future. The final result worked well and looked like this. I'm not sure I like this button design for the game's main interfaces, but it will do for now. During the week, I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. For those of you from the UK, if you like comedy or theatre, it was an amazing thing to go to, so definitely recommend. Anyway, once I got back, the next thing I decided to do was add the ability to switch machines on and off. This will be useful when machines are low on health and they need to be turned off to prevent them from breaking down or processing too many things. Thankfully, the switches I made for the control panels are super easy to add and make functional, and I got that working pretty quickly. Here is a simple example of what can be done with a combiner and an alchemizer. With that added, I set it as complete on Trello and moved on to the next big feature of the game, planting trees. I started with a dilemma of whether to have employees that plant trees in a selected area or to allow the player to paint trees freehand. I weighed up the pros and cons of each and decided that it would be more fun to have the instant feedback of placing trees by hand. So first, I created a new category for the build menu. I then set all the trees to match that category for when they're added to the menu. And just like that, the trees display in the build menu but can't actually be placed yet. To do that, I had to create a new tool called the tree brush. Here I had that just snapping to the grid and highlighting the area where the player is hovering over. Next, I got that to highlight valid spaces in which trees can be planted. And with a bit of coding, I got it to place trees whenever the player is holding down their mouse over a valid space. But for some reason, it was placing trees over the top of each other. You can see that from the extremely dark shadows under the trees. The solution to that was setting the trees to have a layout so the game knows what space the tree occupies. And with that, I got the brush working. At the moment, it's destructive and unlimited trees can be placed, but I'll be adding much more functionality next week to make it satisfying for the player, and more of a gameplay feature than a simple brush tool. If you want to follow the game a bit more closely, the link to the Discord is in the description. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I release videos like this every week, so smash subscribe if you want to see more. That's all for this week, cheers for watching.